how would you categorize race relations between black and white people in the United States today?
From a media standpoint, division.
Welcome back for part 2 of the newest series, Black and White on the Gray Issues. Last time I took the streets to see if relations between black and white Americans were actually as bad as legacy media would have you believe. And what do you know? The narrative couldn't be further from the truth. Turns out you can actually find some common ground and have great dialogues when you actually start talking with people. That being said, I'd be lying if I said it was entirely smooth sailing. If you talk to enough people, you will eventually find an outlier, and this was an outlier, which took place in our final interview of the day. Now, without spoiling too much, see if you can tell how this particular conversation went differently.
Or the reason
We
we
would still be
first
slaves
place.
if it was for you, baby.
All right, just for a second, it may be that I'm a little old-fashioned. That seems a little wild to me, but let me know in the comments below what you think. Did this woman just offer a fair assessment or pure, unadulterated insanity?
Let me ask you, where would you put, or how would you categorize race relations between black and white people in the United States today?
I think from a media standpoint, division.
Right.
I think that's where we are. I think that there is division. I do. I think there's definitely some microaggressions and things like that that are apparent. But on my everyday interacting, I think it's an array of things. I think there's some positivity. There's some growth opportunities. I think I have within my circle. It's diverse.
Yeah.
And I love that it's diverse, but I also think that we're not having those conversations within my diverse community.
So when you say diverse, do you mean racially? Do you mean
Racially.
ideologically, politically?
Politically and racially.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have white, black, Republican, Democrat, and all in your circle of friends?
Yes, I have pretty much everything.
What would you say has kind of helped you? I think learning from different people helps you grow. What would you say has helped you grow more? Having people of different races in your circle of friends, or people of different ideologies, people from different walks of life?
I think walks of life.
Yeah.
I think you learn more. I think because I can meet another African American person who's had a different upbringing than I do, and I'm learning what their struggle looks like versus my struggle, because it's very different. I think it's really truly about being open.
Yeah.
Open to listening, open to learning, and having the conversations.
So you're saying that in your day-to-day, your experiences have been good, probably because of your circle of friends. Compared to the media, it sounds like you're saying there is some division out there, but not so much in your circle of friends.
Not within my circle of friends, because I choose them, right?
Right.
So this is my choice. It's my choose to have people in my circle that I don't have to fight with all the time, that we are open and we learn from one another. But I take a look at where we are in their schools. They go to private schools.
Okay.
So there's complete division with racial divide, seeing our black boys in the private school arena get in trouble where the white boys don't get in trouble for the same offense. I see that every day.
Why don't you just take them out of private schools?
Because at the end of the day, it's a better education.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
Because that's got to be tough then if you have to choose. Like, what kind of things
It
would they
is.
get into trouble for that white kids would? Like, what do you experience?
A fist fight. I brought it up last year. If you see two black kids in a fist fight, they'll probably get suspended. You see two white kids in a fist fight, which rarely happens in private school, then it's a pat on the back. It rarely
I don't know. I
happens.
can't tell if you're joking or if you're serious. Is it rare, like white kids get into a fight in a private school, or are you saying they get in just as many fights?
No, fight in general at private school is very rare.
Okay, in
Right.
general.
Yeah.
Whether white or black.
Whether whatever race it is.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah. I was raised in Canada where we had a zero tolerance policy, so it didn't matter if you defended yourself or you started the fight, you were all suspended, which I think is morally reprehensible.
I think
I was suspended because I got punched in the face.
well, that's not good. No, because you were defending yourself.
Yeah, I didn't. Well, I didn't really. I mostly just turtled.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna need you to defend next time.
I learned that later on. But see, at that
Right.
point, I was a little bitch, is what
Right.
I was. I didn't know. I was afraid. The kid was 2 years older than me.
Oh, well, that's not good.
14 to 16.
Yeah,
it's
not
a
good.
huge difference. You're not going to do anything. You just turtle.
And just maturity, body, the whole thing.
Yeah, the whole thing.
The whole thing. Yeah.
Oh, it was a terrible experience.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good example. We weren't teaching kids that, hey, not all violence is equivalent. Like if someone attacks you, you're saying this as a mom, you would probably want your kids to defend themselves.
To defend, yeah, of course I would.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's why it says there's a legal defense for defending yourself.
No, absolutely right. You mentioned microaggressions. So you're the first person today who's mentioned that. What do you mean by that? Microaggressions
meaning they say little things, they meaning non-people of color, will say little things not realizing that it's a microaggression, not realizing that it's hurtful, that it's racism, because it's so micro.
So like what would be an example of that?
My hair. Oh my God, can I touch your hair? Oh my God, is that real? Things of that nature. Or we didn't do that. Or, it's just, Carrington, you want to give me some microaggressions?
Like, your hair's not real. You speak so... You're so articulate.
Well.
You speak so well, even though I'm just using basic English. Because they assume I'm going to be speaking using AAVE or African American vernacular or phonics, whatever you want to say it, put it as. But yeah, it's just things like that. They're little things. I remember in 6th grade, somebody said my hair looked like spaghetti hair because I had twist. And I don't know what y'all... Look it up. Look up twist. I had like round twist in, and they said my hair looked like burnt spaghetti. And that's a microaggression, right? You don't realize it, but it is hurtful in the long run. It makes you feel othered, and that's not okay.
When I was in high school, I had I had a horrible haircut, and it was cut very short on the sides and tall. And I was told that I looked like a retard Patrick Dempsey.
Yikes.
So that wasn't so much a microaggression as a.
That's just aggression.
That's just aggression.
Right, yeah.
But my point is, that happens to everybody. And my question is, I think maybe it comes down to, is that necessarily racist, or if we just view it through the lens of, maybe this is something I'm uncomfortable with, but they're not meaning it to be racist, right? Racism would have to come with intent.
Racism does not have to be intentional.
Racism can be subtle for sure.
It can be subtle.
There's something called internalized racism because of how society just shows things off, right? A lot of women, a lot of girls, just look at Disney princesses. There's only one black Disney princess, and that's not crazy, but little girls look at their little princesses, right? And they look at all this array of like plenty of white women, right? And they aspire to be that a lot of the times. And I feel like little things like that, you're internalizing racism even though it's not blatant racism. I think everyone thinks that racism is this like thing that people go out and hurt people with, but a lot of the time it's just like the way you think. You think white bodies and white people first and don't necessarily think about people of color in your life, right? It's more so a mindset than blatant like hurting people, you know what I mean?
What would be, I guess, oh, sorry, are you comfortable talking with your mom? Or?
Sure.
Okay, here, do you mind getting into this so I don't, because right now the camera's going to be going back and forth. It's
sorry.
going to be going back and forth like a Wes Anderson film.
Yeah.
So you see, we're not trying to sandbag. What was your name, by the way?
She's so amazing.
Carrington.
Carrington?
This is what she does. She's so amazing.
Stephen, and Eddie.
Eddie, yep.
Could you give me some examples there, maybe more examples of internalized racism? Because let me tell you where white people are nervous, okay?
Okay.
This is where I think
love to hear that.
Yeah, so in other words, if you're talking about white people being racist, right, toward you, and that's a legitimate concern, of course, in some places you're going to have individual racists. It's a different conversation from systemic racism, right, or internalized racism, but we all acknowledge that. I will tell you this, the reason that a lot of white people don't have these kinds of conversations like this is because they're afraid of being accused of being, they're afraid of being accused of being racist.
Yeah, white fragility.
Well, see, that is an attack to just say white fragility. What if someone, for example, we just interviewed every single black man who we interviewed today, every single one, said, yeah, the Black Lives Matter thing got out of hand. All lives matter. Everyone's lives matter. And I don't think that was good for either community. Every single black man that we interviewed today. And if I were to say that same thing, right, because I don't think the problem is just race, and I think we do have a failed justice system, by the way. I think you'll miss it if you think it's just race. Well, we can't classify that as white fragility or a microaggression.
Okay, so let me define
I
white fragility.
disagree with every black man you spoke with today, but go ahead,
okay,
Carrington.
Right, but they're entitled to their opinion.
They are.
It surprised me that they said it.
So white fragility means that I think we're on the same page. You're just defining it as different. So white fragility means when white people are afraid to confront the fact that they might have racism or might have racist thoughts. That's white fragility.
But what if they don't?
They don't. Literally almost everybody in America does because of the way America works. Even black people have racist thoughts towards black people, right? So it's kind of hard to get out of there unless you're like not from America, and even then it's pretty difficult. So literally everyone has some form of racist thoughts. With white people it's just easier because they're not black or they're not a person of color. They don't have the system around them necessarily to confront that because they don't have to, right? So it takes more work on their part, right? And there's nothing really necessarily, it's not great, but there's nothing wrong with working more harder to get to a certain point. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So
I just want to be clear that I understand, as a white guy, obviously, and I get it. Look, we're coming from different perspectives. You're defining something that you just said would require more work, right?
Yeah.
It would be a form of racism that they may not know, that frankly is something that they were born with, white fragility, through no fault of their own.
Yeah.
What you just outlined is racism.
Right.
I mean, no, you saying white fragility, that would be racist toward, like, saying, yeah, you are blamed for something that you were born with. You have white fragility just
so
because you're
racism,
black.
no. Literally everybody has their own form of racial fragility. You know that, right?
So there is black fragility as a term that's taught. Latino fragility.
I mean, everyone can be racist towards certain people, and when black people are called out for certain things in the black community that are not necessarily great for the black community, sometimes they'll get defensive, especially if it's not somebody coming from the black community, because one, that could be seen as like perceived hate because you never know who you're talking to, and also just because like white fragility is a complicated subject because a lot of people feel it, you know what I mean, and it does hurt people, their emotions, so it's really hard to just kind of break that down. And I feel like that's really the issue, is people are not willing to break that down. Having white fragility is not a good thing, but most white people have it, so they have to work through it, you know what I mean? I think it's just because society puts this on other people. It's not necessarily like white people's fault, it's society's fault for putting that on white people, and that's a lot of things with like racism. Society puts things on black people, right? But I think
white people put it on themselves.
White
I don't
people-
think so. I think white people are society.
Well, yeah.
I think it's one and the same.
Okay, let me explain. Our society is based off of white supremacy from a historical standpoint, right? From the Tulsa massacre to slavery to literally like all our presidents except for one being black from the long period of time, right? Our society is based on the ideal of whiteness, from the nuclear household, 1-2 parent households, things like that. And black people can have 2-parent households, but that's not how our community has ever been based. Even from Africa, we have been based on a village style of living and working together. It takes a whole village to raise a child, and black people truly embody that, while white people tend to have more of a nuclear family, 2 parents and a few children, and they work together, right? There's nothing really wrong with the nuclear family, but it is like an embodiment of the American dream and whiteness, right? So because society is built on all of this whiteness and all of these standpoints that are made for white people, they're just more used to that, right? And they're not really used to thinking outside the box and thinking about people of color, and that's what I'm talking about. And when they're confronted at the fact that they don't think about people of color, you get white fragility because they're scared and they didn't want to realize that let me rephrase this. They didn't realize that they weren't thinking about people of color, or they were in the back of their mind and they get scared, right? So it's
I hear you, but I disagree with you, because I think right now at this very moment, you saying that's racist is privilege, honey. That's
Also,
nothing but privilege.
No, I'm saying
it's white privilege.
I'm saying the idea.
To be able to say that.
Also, if you define
I'm not, so I shouldn't be
racism
able to say that. I mean, we haven't had these.
No, to be able to say it and to live in that, I think it's white privilege.
You're not making the right argument. The definition of racism is power behind discrimination. You can discriminate against white people. Anyone can. But you can't necessarily be racist towards white people, because racism comes from discrimination plus a place in society where you get to have power, right? That is the not clinical. If you look on Google, that's not necessarily what you're going to get, because Google dumbs things down, right? But if you look at like...
We agree there.
Yeah, right. So if you look at like more like racial context, if you look at like oh my God, I forgot her name, bell hooks, and so many different racial scholars, that's the definition that is greatly agreed on in the academic space. So racism is discrimination plus power, essentially. So white people have more power than most people of color, all people of color in the United States, while some people of color don't have as much power. So punching up is not the same as punching down. Anybody can discriminate against anybody. That's just a fact. But racism is based on a system of power.
Now, I don't know if this would be white. Would you be open to the idea that some of those things maybe are incorrect, and someone may be white and say, hey, you're wrong about this historically, and that not be called white privilege?
Well, I mean, if you have the facts, I can't even, if you have like facts and you have proof to like back it, there's no issues with that.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about.
The nuclear family. That's a big one. I don't know if you know this, but there were far more in the United States.
Yeah.
It's a far lower divorce rate for a very long period of time. At the same time that black households had higher literacy rates.
Why? There's a lower divorce rate.
There was a lower divorce rate for a very long time
You know
until
why?
it went.
Because women had to, because they didn't own credit cards. They couldn't get divorced. They couldn't live without a man. That's literally the reason why the divorce rate was so low.
No,
because
I'm
women
talking about
couldn't
before this, by the way, historically. We're talking
know,
about from the
I'm
inception
talking
of the
about-
country, before the suffragette movement. So this would be the same thing that white women and black women would face, the issues you're talking about. So those same groups, black families were very strong, had low divorce rates, had large households, and a big part of it was because of the faith basis back then. And it was, again, the community, right, the church, would also encourage strong households. I noticed, Eddie, you have a wedding ring.
Community thing.
Are you married?
Yes.
Yeah, my dad.
Okay, now let me ask you, why?
Why what?
Why you send your kids to private school, which is very commendable, right? You obviously care about your kids. You're married.
If I didn't, I would still care.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm financially able.
Right.
If she wasn't,
But
she
why
would
do you
still-
think
I
that
would
the
still
reason you
care.
choose to be married and have a nuclear household, did you make that decision because it was what you thought was best? Or do you think that's because of white supremacy, white fragility?
Well, there's things that are implicit, and also, like, for my mom, it's just because she loves my dad. Our household's not that nuclear because we have so many people that support us outside of our house. Like, it's not just all mom and dad. If I want to go to my uncle, he'll take care of me. You know what I mean? It's not really that nuclear.
My husband is fine,
Yeah.
and I love him. He's my man, and that's why.
That's
literally
a
why.
wonderful thing.
That's it.
Yeah. So it's not a byproduct of
For that one,
white supremacy,
well, the reason-
white supremacist society. A
we
lot
don't
of
really
historically.
live in a nuclear household anyway in our home, so we
It's
can't
a
really
village
apply
that
it.
raised- it's
It's
a
a village.
village.
We can't really apply that to us, anyways.
Yeah, you can. Do you know how
I
many?
mean-
Do you know how many kids, white or black, go to private school if they don't have a mom and dad in the house?
No, like,
Statistically, none. Whether you're white or black, it's very, very
it's
rare.
very difficult. Yeah, I
It
have
helps with
plenty of
two
friends.
parents who are still there. That's
Yeah,
a big. And I think that's, by the way, it's a huge blessing. I think what you just said about your husband, I would love to hear everyone say about their husband and their wife.
Yeah, she loves him very much.
Yeah, that's one thing actually when we talk about different, I think that a lot of white women probably could learn from is there's a lot of loyalty in the black community, a sense of community that often white people do not have. And you'll see it with men and women. You'll see it with them leaving pretty quickly. I think that's a beautiful thing, but I think that's a huge privilege for everybody, regardless of race. But historically, if someone, and I don't even want to get into exactly where I would disagree historically as far as Africa, the idea of the nuclear family being white supremacy or Disney princesses.
Well,
But my question is, where can a white person, because we've had conversations all day, where can a white person disagree and say, yeah,
I mean,
that's not racism, or you know what, I don't agree with the idea of white
If they-
fragility and
Let
them
me
not be a
finish.
racist?
okay.
Because I was just told that is privilege to even say I disagree with your opinion.
No.
No, that's not necessarily what we're saying. You kind of low-key said that. Anyways, but what I'm saying is
sorry,
if you have the
I don't know what I
facts,
She's talking to me.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I was like, I didn't say.
no,
She
I'm
tells
talking
me
about
when I'm
her.
wrong
okay.
too.
But
Hopefully, if I'm
here's the thing,
trying
if
to
you
be
have the
and
facts and you
listen,
have the
yeah.
backing, there's no issue with debating something, but you need to understand what the core is. So somebody said, I don't think white fragility exists because of XYZ reasons, and someone comes back with no, and they're still very hard-headed about it, or they don't see the reasons, or they don't really look into those facts. That's where the issue lies. If there's an actual discussion, I don't really care if you think fragility is real or not, because eventually you are going to come to an opinion that is not necessarily based on how you feel, but on facts. And then from there, you can do whatever you want.
Right.
I don't necessarily care about what people.
So, like, if someone were to go through, example, just to kind of use your timeline, and as someone who was raised in Canada, right, not the United States, someone use your timeline and say, actually, according to Professor West, black men, black activists, well over 95% of slaves in Africa were sold into slavery by African slave traders, including largely black
Still
African
wrong,
slave
but
traders.
yeah.
Of course, it's wrong. And this was the first country to fight the bloodiest revolution in history in order to free the slaves because they recognized that it was ungodly based on the Judeo-Christian principles, and we signed the Emancipation Proclamation. We were not uniquely responsible for starting slavery. We were uniquely responsible for ending it in the modern world. And there are more slaves today than ever in recorded history
Okay, so
on Earth right
That
now.
right
42
there. I
million.
would never. Okay. No.
40,
Go
no, the
ahead,
fact
get
is
it, child,
42
'cause
million,
I
and
don't
someone
get
says,
it
so
on
since
that
there are
one.
more slaves on Earth today, largely in the Middle East
Ooh,
and Africa
Lord.
and in Asia, that it would imply that those countries are probably more systemically racist than the least systemically racist country in the world, the United States. If someone were to walk through that line of history,
You're walking through it very
Okay,
incorrectly without
Okay.
understanding the basis and the foundation
Also, you
of the
can't really
African
say
heritage.
What
white
part is
people,
wrong?
You can't say white people ended racism because
You
black
can't.
people fought to end racism. So white people
It
are the reason
we
we
would
existed
still
in the
be
first
slaves
place.
if it was for you, baby. If for white people, we would still be
Really?
enslaved. I believe that. I
not
believe
believe that, but
necessarily.
how much have you read from Washington, from Jefferson,
All of it.
from Lincoln?
After he was raping all the slave women and making babies
So
with
that would be,
them and
again,
all that.
historically
Okay.
inaccurate.
That is very true.
We're talking about
That's very true.
We're
It's not- it
talking
is
about
true that-
Jefferson.
It is true that
Jefferson
they
has-
freed their slaves upon their death because it was illegal at
It's
that
very
point.
true that he
also-
raped slaves and he
raped
has
Sally,
children.
too.
And he has
Jefferson
children by her.
definitely raped Sally. Hamilton's
that's
wife
his-
had plenty of slaves. So let's not
No,
even
they all
go
had
there.
slaves. They all
Yeah,
had slaves.
exactly.
And
Because they
raped them
came
and
from
had
the old
children.
country where there were slaves.
And raped
but-
them and had children.
Certain
No,
ones
Jefferson
did.
did.
Jefferson
Jefferson
definitely
has
did.
a line of children.
Okay, so do you believe that if it were up to all white people, meaning the North, the people
From then, we would
No.
still be enslaved.
So who-
Okay, that's not a good take. Anyways, I love you, but no.
I
what
believe
I'm
that,
saying,
and that's my belief.
I think.
So what was the
no, it's
start
not- you
of-
can't
what was the
group all
start
white
of
people,
ending
'cause
slavery?
Quakers existed, you know. But what I am saying is that because Quakers exist, you can't blame all. You know,
I
There's
don't want to
people who
blame all, but I do think
you
that
can't say
because we
that all
fought.
white people. There's Quakers and people that exist like that. I'm saying a lot of white people in the past did not want a change in slavery. I mean, like very much.
That's
yeah.
what I'm saying. Not
The
all
British
white
Empire?
people today. I'm saying
Yeah.
from that era.
And I'm saying
All of Africa
there's
today?
People,
Yeah, from
and there's
that
some
era.
people that
Most of
didn't,
Africa
right?
today,
There's
yeah.
a lot of white people who did. There's a lot of white people. Not all. There's some white people who didn't. But what I'm saying is the reason that we got
Can I
out of
say
slavery is
something?
because
There
of
were
our
enough
hard
white
can I
work.
say-
people to win a war.
Can I say something though,
Yeah.
without
Sure.
for both of
Oh,
you,
sorry.
because you both obviously are. Even though she's 17, she can run circles around you every day. Y'all are really good at this.
Just waiting for it.
Yeah, she's really good. I still feel like we're not going to get anywhere with this conversation.
Right, because you started off with the idea that it
See,
must be
we're
based
not
on
growing.
racism.
We're not growing
Right.
in this conversation at all.
And you can't. And this
You're
is the only-
defending,
No, I'm,
and she's defending.
No,
Nobody
no.
is moving forward.
That's
Wouldn't
true.
it be incumbent? In other words, we're talking about defending, and this is why I say we've had a lot of conversations today. This is why we're down here, right? The first person to say white fragility is something that can't be disproven is the conversation where it cannot be productive because it starts from a racist premise. If I were to come in and say, hey, you know what, not enough black people and white people are talking about these issues, and that's because black people are incredibly fragile, that probably wouldn't be a productive conversation, right?
I think we can say.
I think I'm intelligent enough to have that conversation.
I think
and
yeah, you
steer
can. I think you can
different.
definitely say
No.
that black people are fragile about certain things. I think there's something wrong
'Cause
with
there's
saying
truth
that.
to it.
There's truth to that. I think every race is fragile at certain things within that race. I don't think that's. No,
no, I don't. I disagree. Yeah.
No, you can
I
say black people
disagree.
are fragile about this certain
I
thing.
feel
as
black
long as-
people are fragile. You could say that,
that.
and then we can then
have
educate
a
you on
discussion
why.
about
Sure.
it.
Yes.
Right. When I talk to you about fragility, every time you come up with like this is racist, this is racist, this is racist, almost every single time, and I
Because
talk,
it is.
and I disagree with you on that because racism is power plus oppression, right? I mean power plus discrimination, right? And you can't have right fragility because there's no you can't. Black people can't be. Race fragility is not racist because it has no power behind it, right? So, or it has. I mean, there has power behind it towards black people. That's why it is like white people having race fragility is racist. Does that mean? Because that means they have a racial.
So
I'm not
Do you really,
convinced.
do you
you
believe that
really,
black people
really-
have no power behind them in the United States?
I think every race has power behind. I mean, there's power in numbers, but I don't think our power is equal to the white man.
Oh, exactly. So here's my question for you, because I'm gonna
I
take
think it depends on the person, is what I
I
would say.
don't.
I think well,
I think it depends on the
we're talking about
white person.
systematically, right? So we're talking about the
talking
prison
about-
industrial
right.
system and things like that, and racial profiling and how people think things, how people categorize and stereotypes, and the Jezebel and the Sapphire and all. I think that's the word. I think I messed up the word on that. Maybe I didn't. And the Jezebel and the Mammy and all of those things, and how black women in healthcare systems, especially, and things like
You're
that.
just throwing out words. Jezebel can apply to white people too. What are you
It
you're talking
can,
about? The
but
idea that
historically,
the
especially
slut
in
shaming?
minstrel shows, it applies to black women. That stereotype is placed more on black women. You feel it can apply to white people, but it's not as often.
We're just
Okay.
across from the restaurant, the slutty vegan. I mean, it's something that goes
Okay,
across the board.
I know.
My point
What
is,
I'm
if we
saying
identify
is
as a
just
racial issue,
Slutty
we
vegan
need-
is owned by a black woman.
But anyways, but what we're saying
But
is
my
that
point is there are plenty of sluts. A lot of people like them.
I
across
under-
all racial
Jezebel.
boundaries.
Jezebel
It's biblical.
has
It's biblical.
It's biblical, but it
Yes.
also historically has been used against black people in minstrel shows a lot too. So Jezebel has a slightly more racial coded tone than the word slut does. You feel what I mean?
Any of those problems that you identify, because this is one thing we've talked about today. Any of those problems that you just identified, for example, you talk about the prison industrial complex, you talk about school, you talk about government.
Yeah.
Are any of those problems not racially based?
So prison industrial system, definitely. What was the next one?
Public education.
Education. Because of like where living spaces are, and because of like systems and
Zoning, the
slums
whole
and
nine.
redlining and all of these things.
Yeah.
That's based on anti-blackness and also based on class. And class
We
is
can
a
toss
whole-
Disney in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Disney has racism
And
too.
Ty, the Beanie Baby Company.
Yeah. Anyways.
I lost a ton of money on those. I'm really waiting for them to go up in value.
Do you realize that Ty, the Beanie Baby company right now, owns the license for all the Disney princesses, but he refuses to make one Disney princess, and that happens to be Tiana, and he refuses to make that one?
Yeah, it's not great.
So I'm just saying, it lies within so many different facets.
Also, like, just like think about like who.
I got to tell you, it doesn't.
There's nothing to say about that. That's just horrible, right?
Yeah, I don't know that that's even true, or that it's because of her race.
She worked for him.
I know that Princess and the Frog was one of the most successful modern Disney films.
It's true because it's director.
We just had a Black Mermaid that comes.
Okay,
from,
can I speak?
She was director
of marketing. Director of marketing.
Sure.
It's very true. I worked for the company for 5 years. So instead of saying I don't know that's true, I would love for you to say, oh my God, that must be hurtful. This is where the divide is. You automatically went to. Let me speak. You automatically went for. Back up a little bit. You automatically went for. I don't know if that's true. I don't know. Instead of saying, wow, could that be true? If so, that must be horrible.
I don't know that it's true, and that I'm not going to attribute.
I'm telling you what the tone is that you just set for me.
But you've been wrong about so much that I don't trust what you're telling me. You just said that there weren't white people freeing the slaves. It was only because of black people.
I didn't say that.
So Jefferson raped his woman.
I never
said that. Accurate. So I'll take your word.
How do you know he didn't rape his woman?
There's a guy named David Barton. He has a bunch of historical artifacts.
Were you there?
So were you?
Mama, this is not an argument.
So can I answer your question? Can I speak?
Then let's both say no.
Can I speak?
Then let's both say no. We both don't know.
This is, I think we're kind of identifying the primary issue.
Stop saying mom to me.
It's not black-white. It's male-female. I think that's the issue that we're running into here.
No, it is black and white. It's very black and white.
I think that the interrupting and the aggression and the implication that someone needs to back up when I have not taken any closer steps towards you.
I don't care, but if I feel uncomfortable, it's not.
And we've been able to have productive conversations with black men across the board, and by the way, most women, but there does seem to be a divide in interrupting, in being abrasive, and certainly being more aggressive.
So, I didn't talk. Mama, please.
Wait a minute. I didn't start out that way.
We're going to
Can you
make it
wait?
worse.
Let me say this.
You understand, like, we're in a trap, right?
You're
making this worse.
It is a trap. Let me say this. It didn't start out that way. Mm-hmm. You made me feel that way.
I don't care.
Okay, good. End of conversation.
I care about the facts. I wasn't intending to make you feel that way.
It's the end of the conversation.
That's fine.
You just shown your true colors.
I don't care that you feel that way if you're wrong. And that wasn't
you were trapped, and you guys, and this is
every
horrible.
Single conversation today has been productive. We found more in common than less. Every single one.
Yeah.
With the exception of this, and this is the only one where I was told I couldn't have an opinion because of white fragility, and
you could have an opinion. I said personally that you could have an opinion, right? I said that multiple times, as long as you come with facts and like proof, right? Because here's my thing.
But we haven't addressed any of them.
We have, especially with the same thing. I said from my sources and from my facts, we have a difference of facts and opinions. So we should have dropped that totally and completely, moved on to something else, like maybe the prison industrial system, or maybe something else that has more basis. But you just kind of hounded on the fact of one thing, and you didn't really address. This is not a great conversation to have, right? And for my mom, she's not like. I'm trained in debate, so I know how to see certain debates you're making, and I know how to move around them or know how to deal with them. She does not. So she'll fall into that trap a little bit more easily of how...
What trap have I laid? I'm really not trying to lay a trap.
You're not laying a trap, but you're being difficult to talk to and understand, and there's a lack of empathy on both sides. And I feel like that's the main issue, is there's a lack of empathy on both sides, and we're not really reading each other or hearing each other. And that's where the main issue is. And Mom, she's pretty strong-willed, she's pretty strong-headed, and when she comes to debate, she comes to win. I come from a different perspective.
Sure.
So my goal was this. For us to hear each other. And within this conversation, I didn't feel that. It changed. You just told me I don't care. You just said there's no facts. You just told me everything negative instead of listening and hearing. And I thought this conversation would have been completely different.
Well, the good news is
and now I feel like I'm in a trap.
And you'll be able to see the behavior that you have exhibited here, and not myself. And you can watch it. Okay. You can rewind it.
That's what you think of black women.
Mom, you're making a whole lot of statements right now that are not helping this conversation and making you look worse.
Is it possible that I think that maybe you've been impolite, that maybe you've been inaccurate in some of your assumptions yourself,
people have been impolite,
and not because you're black?
We've both been impolite.
And not because you're black. So why does it have anything to do with your race if I just think you've been aggressive?
I think, so here's the thing. Here's what I want you to hear. Whenever a woman or a black woman
aggressive woman,
asserts herself, or says this is
Please
incorrect.
don't do it. It's so tired to do that. It's so tired.
Okay.
to
The
just use
conversation's
another
now
generalization.
over.
That's
Have a wonderful
I'm
day.
saying
Because
that's
the way
true.
you're treating me.
because you do you
It's
see
the
what
way you're
when you
treating
say
me.
Mom,
every time a
making it
black
worse.
woman asserts herself, no.
Or a
That's
woman.
not true. That's not true.
Okay,
That's not true.
Let's
That's
rephrase
not
it.
what's happening
A lot of
here.
times, often there's a thing called tone policing. I'm sure you know about it, right?
Sure.
And that happens a lot often to people in these have these conversations. When people get aggressive about something that hurts them, a lot of people will tell them they're being aggressive instead of looking deeper.
Passion.
Instead of looking deeper into what's going on and seeing how that hurts them and having empathy. Empathy's the biggest thing.
I have, but the thing is,
But
you're
you
not hearing me.
haven't.
You
I'm
haven't
trying to
shown
hear
it.
you.
The root cause of it is historical inaccuracy and lies that you've been fed. To say that the nuclear family is white supremacy, or it's an example of white supremacy, here's the thing. Do any of those ideas make black children's lives better? It makes it worse.
The
It makes
nuclear
it
family
worse.
does not make really anybody's lives
It's the
better.
single biggest indicator that you have success, of ending up in prison, of graduating high school, of being literate, or having successful
two
marriage.
parents, sure, that's useful.
Having
But
a mom and dad
because
and them
of the
involved in your
nuclear,
lives. It's not even close.
because of the nuclear family, right? Having your mom and dad, right? But
Yes.
but what if an uncle takes that place of the dad? You can still have those benefits, right? It's more so just only having one parent to depend on. It's not because of the nuclear family. It's having one parent to depend on. If they're here's the thing: if one parent, let's say, died, right? But they had the entire family come in and help those children, they're probably still as well off.
Right. So why is that not happening in the black community?
It is.
It is.
It is. The black community is very
we're
communal.
living it. We're living
I think it's a
it.
beautiful thing that you are living.
We're living
but it's
it.
not. Statistically, it's not. Statistically, there are more children in
there's
the
more
black
single
community.
households.
Yes, single households is not even close, and the family is not stepping in. And if you look at the tables, you look at the statistics regarding literacy, regarding graduating high school, regarding crime,
I feel
regardless
like
of
that's
how much
more of
money
a
is.
class issue because I'm talking about like okay,
If I could-
continue.
yeah. It's the single biggest indicator that we have of one's success in life, from behavioral issues to successful relationships themselves,
What do you
to
think
going
it
to
is,
school.
Mom?
For behavioral issues.
I'm gonna walk out.
Also, yeah.
I'm telling you exactly what I think it is. I think it's very important for children to have parents in their lives.
Psychology, because I plan on being a psychology major and I study this a lot. A lot of time, for medical issues and things like that, people will often diagnose black children with behavioral issues instead of looking at other criteria.
Prison. Murder, arson, theft. I'm not talking about ADHD. I'm talking about the chances of single parent households,
This is also a great
murder, prison, theft,
Can I
violent
continue,
crimes,
please?
right?
I'm just trying to, this is like a little pinpoint so I can get you to see like a bigger picture, I suppose. So when you look at
I
like
apologize for being myopic.
yeah. So
What did you say?
I said I apologize for being myopic.
So when we look at black children, right, they're more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD and things like that, but also behavioral issues.
So what was that? They tend to be. I just didn't hear it.
With like different mental issues and behavioral issues, right? Let's go with that. So they're more likely to be diagnosed with behavioral issues instead of like other mental conditions, right? But in reality, they might fit those better because of the perceived racial biases a lot of people have, right? And this goes to like medicine, how black women are treated, and how they're they're more likely to die in pregnancy and childbirth, right? And I feel like that's just like a small peek into how like a greater society treats a lot of black people. They ignore what we were saying, and they choose to think about us in a different way than what actually is reality.
Okay.
You
So
know
can I
what I mean?
respond to that? There are a couple of things, and this is where hopefully these conversations can take place. There's another reason that black women are more likely to die during childbirth, and that's because of obesity. And when we're talking about behavioral disorders, I'm talking about murder.
Why
I'm talking about
is
violent
there
crime.
obesity?
13%.
So if yes, the why is there obesity?
So
my
again,
God,
is there a
that's
certain point
all
where it's not someone else's fault?
I think everything's connected. You can't really take one thing away
But
from
I'm
the
saying
other thing.
if
you
we
know
take
what I
that
mean?
out, though,
But
the statistic
but I'm
is
saying you
skewed.
can't take
But
it
let's
out
go, and this is why I
because-
said not just behavioral disorders. It's one of many that I listed, right? There's no
Yeah.
getting away from the 13%
all
committing
connected.
52% of the violent crimes in this country. 13% of the population, and it's largely black men, by the way. So it's really about under 6%. So why is that? Why is that, and how
Why are the
do you
mass
offer
murderers
solutions?
are usually white men?
Talking about statistics,
Mama,
13% of the population,
this is
52% of the
not-
crimes, which doesn't help young black boys.
You're not listening, and this is not a productive conversation.
I
so
agree.
therefore, the conversation ends. You're not to use my data for anything.
We do not approve.
I'm not going to use your data.
We do not approve of being on camera or doing anything.
It's a
with
single
you
party
after
consent
this.
state, and you already did. But I'm not sure how productive the conversation is anyway, so it may
just
not be
not a
useful.
productive
I agree with that. I agree with
At
that.
all.
But it may be something that we use.
I'm asking you
you're
not
not
to
to.
use anything.
Okay, I will take it
with
into
my face
consideration.
on it. And Karen,
I'll take it into consideration.
Okay.
We don't want you to use anything with our face or name on it whatsoever on anything having to do with you.
It doesn't
or
matter,
your
though.
company.
It doesn't
Yeah,
matter
so
though.
anything for your YouTube video, we do not. consent to it.
Now, we're going to disagree on this. We're single-party consent laws. Are you familiar with them, or is that just it's the law? Now, if we want to have a conversation about, okay, fine, where you don't want to, but you did consent to this interview. It started off as friendly as all the others today, and now the law says, but that doesn't matter. The law says it doesn't matter.
Unfortunately, we do not consent.
Great.
And if you
Also,
want
what does
to
it
club
say about you as a
can.
company to renege on our consent? You know what I mean? I feel like as a company, that's
She
not
was right,
great.
and I hate that.
It's
I
called
hate that
journalism.
She was right. I hate that she was right.
It's called journalism.
I hate that she. And
But
your
I'm
whole
just saying-
demeanor and everything about you shifted.
But what I'm saying,
And I was so open for a beautiful conversation, and everything about you shifted.
I think it
that's
shifted with the idea of
hurtful.
microaggressions and white fragility, because that's racist. And that's my opinion. And you don't
And-
agree
and
with
that-
it, that's fine.
that's
And you'll
fine.
say it's
And
privilege,
everything that
and you'll
you
say
just
that
did
obesity
right-
is because of white people, and you'll say
Everything
that the
you
murder
just
is
did
because
right
of white
here
mass
is
murderers,
white
but you haven't
privilege.
listened.
Keep walking.
Absolutely.
Kristen.
Everything I've said is white privilege.
Everything is white privilege.
That must be it.
just think about it as like a
White
company.
Yes.
This
Yeah.
is not great for, like, if somebody
We didn't
straight up
get
said, we didn't give
anywhere.
you consent, that's not great for
Can I
a
ask you,
company.
why do you
I have a
think you're the
question.
only ones where that's the case?
I also have a question. If your goal is to show
don't know.
this
Maybe-
love and this great community, this is just not productive.
Right. No,
It's not something
I
that
agree.
really should be shown. Because
I
it's
don't
not
think that this is
productive.
good ambassadorship for that. I agree.
No.
At all.
So why are you
No.
fighting us and
I
saying
thought it
you
was
don't
going
want
to be
this
a
to be shown?
deep, great conversation.
So I have a question. So why are you
that
fighting
we
us
could
on
grow.
why you want this to not be shown, right? I feel like if your goal is to show bonding and community, and we're telling you not to, that goes against your company ideals.
No, well, first off, you don't know the company or our ideals.
But you literally just said it's about bonding and community. So why would you show us, one, not wanting to? That's not
And
nice.
she is a minor.
And I am a minor, but also, like, it's just not a nice thing to do, you know? I feel like from, like, I guess a company perspective, you want, like, bonding community. This is not what that's doing.
No, I agree with you.
So-
But I would ask the question of yourselves, just like you asked me to check privilege, I would ask of yourselves, why is this the only one where that's the case?
We don't
Why
have
are we out
proof
here
of
for
that.
hours? Well, that's the thing is, there's the
We don't
value in
know.
that is when you talk about the
Yeah.
company, seeing the contrast.
Yeah.
That some people don't have, you talked about the Bible, ears to hear. You said that to me, but I have never said it's because you're black. You can go back through this and rewind it. I've never once made a generalization that because you are black, you can't X or Y. You've both
We
done it
never
at
said-
least 8 times.
I said you're more likely
And
to, or
that's-
you're more
and that's why I would
predisposed
say
to, but
this
I
one
never-
wasn't productive.
She has. I personally have not. In this entire
Okay.
thing, I see you're more predisposed to do certain behaviors, like most people are because of society. But I never said because you're white, you're going to be doing this thing. I have not once said that. And I don't think because someone's white, they're more like they're going to do one thing. I think it's based on how they all think. I think it's everything we do as humans is based on how we think, you know?
Then
How
can we
we're
find some
raised.
can we find
And
some
how
common
we're
ground on
raised,
this
how we're
then?
raised.
If I'm going to take what you're just saying, and I believe that it's 100% genuine, can you listen to what I'm about to say and just take it into consideration? So if you just said that you've never once, and you're rolling your eyes.
I'm rolling.
One thing that I'm about to say, because everything I say, you say,
Sorry.
well, no, believe what I'm taking you as genuine at your word.
I
Take
am.
me. It's never going to be helpful for you to start the conversation with racial generalization like white fragility. So even if you make that, in other words,
I
remove
think-
that
I
from
think
your
I can
vocabulary and
I
maybe
think
argue the
I
argument.
think it's a concept. I think the word is like a buzzword, but the concept itself is valid. You know, that people take in what society gives them, and then they have this way of thinking. I think that's a valid concept.
I think it's the idea that you are a byproduct of your environment.
Yeah,
Sure, as a
the
concept.
society
And I think
conditions people.
Yes.
to
I wouldn't say
have those
society
thoughts.
though, because again, it's-
TV, media. Let's go with that then.
that's a big part of it. Yes, and that's what we start off
so
with, right?
let's go with TV and media. If they're conditioned to think that, then
So let me ask you this, because I
Then
think
what's more likely
this is
to
where we're
react
making
on
headway.
that, right?
What you have expressed today, would that be more in line with everything that you see in television and media than what I am communicating? The idea of white fragility, white privilege, that it needs to be checked, that we're systemically racist. That's what you'll see on CNN and ABC and NBC and CBS, right?
it's
that
more
would be
subtle than
conditioned.
that, I think it's a lot more subtle than that. I think it's small things. I think you can say the big word out loud and say white fragility is this X, Y, Z. You can educate people, but it doesn't undo just only being exposed to certain people, right? So a lot of white people especially live in white spaces. They're not really exposed to a lot of people of color, so that's how their brain thinks. There's nothing necessarily, like, it's not great, right? But it's not their fault, and I understand that. Just because something is not their fault doesn't mean it's not bad. Somebody could be like born with psychopathy, right? That's a trait you're born with most of the time. Sometimes slightly raised, right?
Sometimes nature and nurture, yeah, that's fair.
Right? But that doesn't mean it's a good thing, right? So something can be placed on you. It's not necessarily a good thing. It's not necessarily your fault either, right?
Right.
But it's something you should all
Like
work
narcissism.
towards. Yeah, but it's something we should all work towards. to get better from, right? Like if I was born with something horrible, I had to work towards it and become a better person through that. Same thing with something was placed on me. I have to work towards that and become a better person. That's what literally everything. So with media in subtle ways, because it does happen subtly. I mean, look at like this representation, look at on media and Disney Channel, especially Disney Channel, how Black people and Asian people often are portrayed. Little kids absorb that, you know? And I feel like they have to do the work now to get that out of their minds. So I think that's a fair state. And I think getting that out of your minds, people don't want to change. And that's where the white fragility comes from. It's not really because they're fragile, it's because they don't want to change the way they think and they don't want to go against the grain because they don't want to admit to themselves that they've been socialized in this way. And it's not their fault, but they think it's their fault because it's the way they think.
Yeah, I think that is it's the most unproductive way of thinking of these issues that you can imagine, because there's no way to absorb new information. There's no way to use a critical thinking lens, because no matter what I say, you will say maybe it's not white people's fault, but it's because they're white. And if you're going to educate,
I don't think it's because they're white. I think this happens with Asian people as well, you know?
I think, yeah, for example, affirmative action, right? They were being screwed by that at Harvard, at Yale,
I wasn't talking about that. I was talking about
Asians for sure. You know, I don't think it's Asian fragility.
Can you let me continue my sentence?
I wasn't finished with my answer. Can I
was already talking before you did your answer. But what I was saying with Asian people, I was talking about sometimes Asian people have this idea of Black folks because they're only the Black folks they're only shown a lot of the times are these bad stereotypes, especially overseas, right? And I feel like it's still bad, but it's not their fault. So they have to work through that, right?
What if it's because they've been the victim of Black violent crime at a disproportionate rate?
I'm talking about overseas right now. They probably haven't statistically. But
in the United States, it's unbelievable.
I'm talking about overseas right now.
So can I ask you a question?
So overseas, like in Asia?
So here's
overseas, yeah, like in Asia, in Japan, in Korea, where we're a monolith of races, right?
Can I ask you a question? So the undertones that I'm feeling from you right now are, when does Black people of color take responsibility? Why are Black women overweight? Why are men locked up in prison? These are the things that you're amplifying, right, in our conversation, because you're saying all of these things.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay, then that's how I accept.
That's how you feel.
That's how.
And at a certain point, I'm not saying I don't care about you. I don't care how you feel about those statistics that we were discussing. I wasn't the one who brought up.
Okay, so
I wasn't the one who brought up. Hold on a second.
I'm sorry.
Infant mortality rates and maternity death rates. I think that education is a great tool against discrimination. Is a great tool against prejudice. And I think recognizing those statistics and saying, okay, why do we? Now, I'm not saying that it's just because Black women are. I'm not saying because it's melanin, but there are some other issues that if you go, wait, maybe the mortality rate for birthing mothers is lower because of health complications, comorbidities. That's a clarification.
I don't disagree, but there's so much more than that.
I understand, but what I'm saying is when you start that it's race, when I was addressing the issue that it's solely based on race, and I think that if you look at it through that, in other words, your daughter, if I understand Australian debate, said, if you look at and rattled off reasons for, I shouldn't say for, because women are Black, they X, Y, Z. I'm like, that's not because they're Black. There are other compounding factors, and I think that's important.
Okay, so
is that fair?
What's important is, I think that that's fair, but I also think that the baseline, it's not 100% because of any color, right? I think the baseline, because of history, all of the things that have compounded on each other leave us where we are. Right. Now, that's the thing.
So if you look about like redlining,
and I think that I do think that choice is an individual choice and responsibility is the biggest component to that. Certainly bigger than race. I do. Okay, that's my opinion.
Yes, I feel like from a psychology perspective.
Let me go from the heart. Let me go from the heart.
He's not going to listen to that, Mom. He's only about facts. You know that, right?
Okay, I know that you're about facts, but I want to go from the heart. Okay. And I want you to hear me, because I know you think it's not going to work, but if he chooses to air this without our consent, I hopefully he airs this part, because I want you to understand.
I'm listening.
Us being where we are, and my kids in great schools and going off to college and successful children and a 2-parent household and all of that, when we go into the inner city and we do work.
We volunteer.
And I'm listening to the other kids. One boy told me, I didn't know, and this is education, I didn't know that college was an option. I didn't know that smoking weed is not what people don't, that's what we do every day, because that's what he sees. That mom, that was her parent, mother and father before. That parent was that mother and father before. So because they're in this level of the same thing in a school that's a Title I school that's not giving them the education that the other schools are giving them, this becomes a cycle that they don't even know how to get out of. I didn't come from that. My grandfather is a biologist. I'm third, fourth generation college. I didn't come from that. So seeing that and understanding that, even as an affluent black woman, seeing that our inner city kids don't know how to get out, don't have the education to get out, and that's so powerful, and that's the
and it's
main
heartbreaking.
issue.
It's heartbreaking.
That's the issue.
It's education.
It's
They're not getting
more
it.
so than
It's
education.
exposure. It's not education because they go to school every day, right? And they're not being exposed.
Education
outside of
isn't
that.
working.
No, it's not.
It's not working.
Because their education is not the education that she's getting. So it's exposure. Someone going into the inner cities and saying, your life can be different, let me show you. Let me send you away to a camp that says you're on a college campus for this summer and this is what this could potentially look like. Your life does not have to be this. It's us really diving in and going in and exposing our kids to different.
And I think two things. I agree with that, and that's why we're out here. It's incredibly heartbreaking. And I understand what you're discussing, coming from, my father was raised in Detroit, the bad area of Detroit, right? He was there when they did the first cross-district busing interracial system, and it didn't go well. They had the Detroit riots, right? He had people who had it worse, were friends, dads who were black who were cops. They had to go home in unmarked cars. They were being shot by other black men who were snipers on rooftops. It was a horrible war zone. He lived through it. And I understand the statistical reality and how unbelievably hopeless it is for a lot of people, by the way, in this country. And certainly black kids in inner cities. Okay, I agree with all of those things. Now, I would just make 2 points and allow you to just for a moment consider that this isn't coming from white privilege, but that this is a space in which I work, and maybe I am well-read enough to propose a solution that I think we could all at least take a step toward. Okay. One is, I think school is not going to, we both agree, school isn't fixing it.
Nope.
Okay. Now we have to agree that it's not because of money, because these schools get the same amount of money if you look at it. They do. Per pupil spending is okay, let's
We're talking about public schools.
these public schools, it's unreal. But can I just finish, please? Let me finish one trail of thought here. Let's assume that I'm not lying about that. Okay, let's assume that per pupil spending is comparable. Okay, I think the most important thing is going to be the kind of household that you have created with a husband who you love. I think that's far more important than school. And how about this? How about the idea? This is one solution that I've always wondered why everyone can't get on board with. Not school choice. And by that I mean a voucher. I don't mean defunding public education. I mean rather than forcing a child to go to that school because that's his district, the voucher is attached to the child and he can take it to any school he wants.
I agree with that. Okay, I agree with that 100%.
I agree with that. The issue is like if they don't
do you know why it's been shut down in the government?
No.
Because it's racist.
The government's kind of, I don't, the government has like a whole
we have been told that
Congress
that is racist for what you just said. Maybe some black kids don't have parents with cars. Maybe it would be further from the, but the point is, right, at least some choice is better than no choice.
Exactly.
And I come from Canada.
I agree with that 100%.
I feel like that's a policy that almost anybody could agree. I think the government itself has a lot of issues. I think anybody in America who has a brain can see that the government has issues and it's not serving the people, but it's serving the people who lobby.
School vouchers, there's common ground.
Yeah,
I agree
And
with that.
I've actively, by the way, fought for that.
That's a good
on a
thing to
political
fight for.
level.
Yeah, I
But you
agree
know
with
that
that
the
100%.
pushback I face on that is that's racist.
Yeah.
From
that's
whom?
not.
Well, that's the pushback on a national level from the Democratic National Committee.
That's very interesting
Interesting.
because,
And for the same
that's
reasons.
because also that there's money tied behind schools.
Yeah.
There's funding, so all that it goes back down
I
to
think-
I completely
the
agree.
Probably
system of racism.
They're probably saying
A system that doesn't work.
The system that doesn't work.
My only disagreement there would be it's not because, in other words, I don't think that schools in South
I think
Dallas
it's funding, yeah.
with black teachers, with black principals, I don't think that they're racist. I think that there's no accountability in the public school system.
I agree with
so it
that.
hasn't improved. I don't think
I
it's
agree
racist.
with that. I agree with that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I also
agree
just,
with that.
I'm just gonna say, great, we found common
So that's
ground.
productive.
I think that the reason they're saying that it's racist, because it's obviously not, right? I think it's because they probably have some other, like, financial reasoning behind it that's prohibiting you, and I think that's the biggest issue in America, or not the biggest, I think one of the biggest issues in America today is that our people are up high are not doing what they need to do to help the people down low. You know what I
I
mean?
would certainly agree that we have a problem with government not representing their constituency and not acting in the best interest of the people. completely. And I certainly would say that is true of the public education system. And I think it's failed
System,
all children,
law
and
system.
particularly, children in the black community. It has not served them
It's not
well.
just children in the black community. It's people of color.
It's children everywhere
It's
too.
Hispanic. It's black. It's Asian.
It's everywhere.
If it's a white boy, if it's a little white kid that is at a Title I school, he's still getting that same
I agree.
education.
It's a class
so
issue,
it's
it's a
across
race
the
issue.
board.
It's the educational system
That's
problem.
across the board.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
That I agree to.
Right, but the
really
idea
hurting
behind school choices, so they would say school vouchers, and this is why I say this, because I think it's one of those things where I've never heard an argument against it
No,
that was
I
valid,
can't.
is sure, maybe, and I get this, and we go back to the idea of a family, right? Let's say it's a black boy who doesn't have a father who will drive him to another school, right? He's going to be more disadvantaged than someone who does have two parents, but he is distinctly more disadvantaged right now by being a byproduct of what you said, and I agree with, his immediate environment. In other words, right now, where black children are disproportionately negatively affected is they have no choice, and so the school is a byproduct of the environment, and it's not worked.
Also-
And so having the option to go anywhere else, and I say this because I'm from Canada, that's where I was raised, where I went to public school. I was not raised in a wealthy household. I was raised in a 3-bedroom apartment with 4 people, about 900 square feet. But I did get a much better education. The reason I didn't know until I moved to the States, as long as I was willing to get on a bus, I could go to a choice of 5 different schools.
Beautiful.
And I came to the States, and I said, wait a second. You have to go to that school just because it's your zip code? People said, yeah, it's archaic, it's acinined, and if there's no other common ground, I think that's something that hopefully everyone can at least move toward.
Yeah, I think that's why like private school gives you such a bigger advantage, is because you get to choose where you want to go.
And teachers get fired if they're bad.
They do. Some do, some don't.
Some do, but more than public schools.
That's true. It depends on the private school though, because there's some private schools who will not fire teachers who are like horrible people. So
Because it's all.
it's money. Like
money.
if the teacher has a parent who's like really rich that endorses them, they don't get out.
So
right.
Anywhere we go, I think the school system, and we've kind of shifted gears here in this conversation, but no matter what, the school system is just.
That's bad.
I think that
bad.
black and white and brown and Asian people should all be on. This is one area we could all be on the same page as far as reform for public education.
This would
I
be
agree.
a bipartisan issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I wanted to leave it on a pot because I genuinely do want to hear and listen to you guys, and I understand a lot of your points, disagree with some, but I'm glad that we found something that we can genuinely agree on, because that has I'm getting heat stroke, quantifiable effect
Thank
on
God
people's
I'm
lives.
from Texas. I was
So.
born here, so I'm right.
Yeah, I was not. Well, we get 40 below, so no one fares too well in that either.
Same
But
here.
yeah, this is rough. Eddie and
Carrington.
Carrington. Okay.
This is our future. It's pretty good. That's all I can say.
I think there's potential.
Oh, it's pretty good. It's better than potential. She's off to an amazing college and is going to do amazing things.
Well,
hot.
I think that I'm glad that you built a wonderful family and you're supportive of your kids. I think that's very important. And honestly, across the board, people don't take it into account enough, regardless of race these days. And that's a beautiful thing. I mean that.
All right, I apologize. I guess everyone's perfect and in no need of improvement. This wasn't entirely fruitless. Still, you can clearly see the difference between this conversation and all of the others that have taken place in this series. And I'd point out, largely, the difference seems to be people who haven't had to think critically about their positions or defend them. If anything, what was said here could be modeled after every single legacy media and white suburbanite talking point. That being said, I respect anyone willing to take the time to speak, and for that, I thank you. If you'd like to see more of Black and White and the Gray Issues, drop a like, comment, tell me what topics you would like to see most in the future installments. Remember, none of this is possible without you. Join the fight and sign up for MugClub today at louderwithkreider.com/MugClub. Gain access to an unrivaled catalog of unapologetic and entertaining creators, including the Hodge Twins, Nick DiPaolo, Brian Callen, and of course, Alex Jones. All that and everything you see today is entirely funded by viewers like you. For $89 annually, join the fight at louderwithkreider.com/MugClub today.